St John Mary Vianney was born on May 8, 1786 in Dardy, near Lyon. The next year, the events of the French Revolution began, and they came to a climax in 1789 when he was 3. Feudalism was abolished, and civil equality was established among men, but slavery was still permitted in the colonies. The church's property was nationalized, and religious vows were banned. The next year, the civil constitution of the clergy was declared. Clergy were required to swear loyalty to the state and not to obey any foreign power, especially the Pope. Almost all the bishops and about half of the lower clergy refused to take this oath. And then they either went into exile or ministered secretly. Our saints' parents risked their lives to continue practicing their faith with these priests working in secret. St. John Mary made his first communion at 13 in a neighbor's kitchen, with the whole ceremony hidden from people outside. He would sometimes have to walk for miles at night to attend Mass. In 1801, under Napoleon Bonaparte, a reconciliation between France and the Church was negotiated. The loyal clergy could finally come out of hiding or return from exile and resume open worship. Our saint was 15 at the time, and he wanted to become a priest and save many souls, but he lacked the education necessary. All the upheaval of the revolutionary years meant that he had been unable to get more than a few months of schooling, and even at age 17 he was still illiterate. When he told his father about his vocation, his father didn't want to send him to study because he had no money for it and other children to think of. So St. John Mary was 20 before his father finally agreed to let him study. But after some months, another obstacle to his vocation arose. Napoleon had embarked on a campaign of conquest, and he needed lots of troops to do it. So able-bodied young men were drafted, and our saint was among them. He fell ill and so was unable to depart for Spain with his unit. When he recovered in January, he was assigned to another unit, but he missed his rendezvous with it because he stopped to visit a church. He hurried to catch up to it and ran into another man who took his knapsack and ordered him to follow him. That man turned out to be a deserter who was hiding from the army with others, and by the time St. John Mary realized what was going on, he was technically a deserter as well. At that point, he was advised to go into hiding, and so he did for a couple of months until amnesty was declared in March. The next year, 1811, he could finally enter the minor seminary, and after 2 years, in 1813, he was able to go to the major seminary in Lyon to study theology. However, he only lasted a year there because of the great difficulty he had with Latin, and really no wonder for someone who'd only begun studying a couple of years before. His dream of becoming a priest would have been over if he had not been taken in by a priest who gave him private lessons in theology in French and found books in French that he could study. With that help, he was finally able to show a sufficient knowledge of theology. On August 12, 1815, he was ordained a priest in Grenoble. His first assignment was as an assistant pastor to another fervent priest, with whom he had a holy rivalry of prayer and penance. After 3 years of that, he was assigned to the Pastoral Cure of Ars, a village of 230 souls, where he arrived on February 13, 1818. It was a pastoral disaster area. After the French Revolution and the shoddy curates who had preceded him, no one went to church anymore. And humanly speaking, there was little hope that the Cure of Ars could turn this situation around. If he'd been learned and a compelling speaker, then perhaps he could have convinced people to return to the worship of God, but he was none of that. However, the Lord looked upon the humility of his servant. If he had no intellectual gifts, he had a great zeal for God's service. If no one came to church, it meant that he was free to spend the whole day in prayer for his sheep. If he was a peasant, that meant he was used to hunger and could all the more easily fast for the salvation of his flock. He also had a special love for poverty because he was a Franciscan tertiary. Slowly but surely, graces flowed and people started coming to church. First a trickle, then a stream, and then a river that became a flood. Within 8 years, the church was vibrant. In 1824, a preschool was opened for girls, and it came to house some 60 girls who lived on providence, at times miraculously. That same year, a diabolical infestation of the rectory began. There were strange noises, his bed was burned, and sometimes there were other witnesses to these preternatural phenomena. He was also criticized by some of his priests, who said, like they said to Jesus, "Where did this man get all this? Oh, this is an unlearned priest. He barely managed to get ordained. And here he is, a center of pilgrimages, people coming to him from all over." So this was what particularly upset them. These pilgrims began with just a few people coming to ask his advice in 1827. From 1830 to 1845, there were an average of 300 pilgrims a day in Ars. The peak was in the summer, when he would have to confess for 16 hours a day, whereas in winter he could finish confessing in only 11 hours. Only 11 hours. But a special coach line was established between Lyon and Ars with an 8-day return ticket, because people had to wait for days in order to be able to see him. The confessions only lasted a few minutes, but they could change a life. The tears of the cure when he heard the people's sins helped his penitents to understand the gravity of what they'd done. Sometimes he would correct the stated time since the penitent's last confession, or remind him of a sin he hadn't confessed. There are also various stories of him knowing secret things that God revealed to him. One time he told a servant girl that great danger awaited her when she returned to Lyon. The memory of that warning helped her to escape from a serial killer against whom she was able to testify at his trial. The miraculous healings that occurred he attributed to St. Philomena. He recommended prayer to her, and with donations built a chapel to her in the church. He was mortified by the devotion of the pilgrims, and he wanted to go become a Carthusian or a Cistercian so that he could attend to the salvation of his soul. But the bishop, conscious of all the good that he was doing in Ars and to all the people who were coming from all over France and even beyond, the bishop wouldn't let him leave. By 1855, the number of visitors reached to 20,000 a year, and during his last few years he was forced to spend 16 to 18 hours a day in the confessional. He only slept a couple of hours. The rest of the time was the Mass, his prayers, and the long confessions, as well as the 11 o'clock catechetical discourse that he gave for the benefit of the pilgrims. He died on August 4th, 1859, in the last year of his life. The pilgrims reached 100,000. He died on August 4th, 1859 at 2 a.m. He was 73 years old and had been in Ars for 41 years. In 1905 he was beatified, and he was canonized in 1925 by Pius XI, who 4 years later made him the patron of parish priests. Praised be Jesus and Mary.
Amen.